Welcome, the Lord's chosen. When heaven sends a warrior, hell starts a meeting. That's not poetry, that's protocol. Because the moment a chosen one steps into the world, the atmosphere shifts. Suddenly, people who once adored you start glitching like broken software. They can't explain it, but your presence scrambles their comfort zones. You didn't offend them, your existence did. Here's the funny part. They actually thought they were the main characters until you showed up. You were just minding your business, sipping divine tea and walking in purpose, and somehow that became a spiritual crime. Their group chats turned into confession booths. Their gossip became prophecy without them knowing it. But let's get factual for a second. Even science says strong electromagnetic fields interfere with weak signals. So imagine what happens when a human angel walks into a room carrying frequencies straight from the throne of God. That's not energy, that's spiritual Wi-Fi, and not everyone's device is compatible. Now they want to apologize. Not because they've changed, but because the truth finally caught up to them. The one they plotted against wasn't fragile. They were wrestling one of God's strongest angels in human form. This isn't karma, it's calibration. The universe is just reminding everyone what happens when you mistake divine restraint for defeat. Welcome to chosen ones. They want to apologize. They're against one of God's strongest angels in human form. Sit tight. This one's about to get celestial, convicting, and just a little bit funny in that God really set this up perfectly kind of way. Number one, they mocked what they couldn't measure. That's where it all began. People often fear what they can't define, and you were never something they could easily categorize. You carried an energy that didn't fit into their limited understanding of what strength should look like. You weren't loud, yet your silence carried weight. You weren't aggressive, but your presence commanded attention. They thought power had to roar, but yours whispered and still shook the ground. That's why they mocked you. It was their defense mechanism against something that made them feel small. They tried to size you up by the same worldly measurements they use on everyone else: status, popularity, material gain. What they didn't realize was that your value was measured in obedience, not applause. Your worth wasn't built in visibility. It was rooted in alignment. They saw you as too quiet, too calm, too forgiving. They didn't know that God hides his strongest warriors behind humility. The world expects divine strength to arrive wearing crowns and armor, but heaven often disguises it in patience, empathy, and peace. That's how they missed you, because your glory didn't look like noise. They laughed when you didn't retaliate. They rolled their eyes when you stayed kind. They mistook your grace for ignorance. But what they failed to see was that your restraint was strategic. Every time you held your tongue, heaven was taking notes. Every time you walked away, you were building spiritual credit. They thought you were doing nothing, when in truth, you were mastering divine timing. When they mocked you, it wasn't really about you. It was about what you triggered in them. Your light exposed their shadows. Your authenticity made their pretenses uncomfortable. People who live off control can't stand someone who stays powerful without manipulation. So they tried to shrink you, not because you were weak, but because you reminded them they were unhealed. Now the same people who mocked are realizing they miscalculated. They see that what they couldn't measure was exactly what made you unstoppable. You didn't need validation. You carried revelation. You weren't trying to be seen. You were sent. And that's the part they could never measure, because divine assignments don't fit into human formulas. Number two, you were heaven's rebellion in human form. Your life itself was a statement that light still wins, even when surrounded by darkness. From the beginning, your journey didn't follow the normal script. You were wired differently, built to challenge systems that people had learned to accept as normal. You weren't here to blend in, you were here to interrupt. And every time you walked into a room, something in the atmosphere shifted. Not because you tried to be special, but because you carried something that couldn't coexist with deception, control, or fear. That's why opposition found you so early. The enemy never wastes effort on the average. You carried a kind of spiritual defiance that didn't need rebellion through words. Your existence was rebellion enough. Every time you refused to conform to chaos, every time you stayed soft in a hard world, you were pushing back against hell's agenda. People didn't understand that your resistance wasn't about ego or stubbornness. It was divine programming. God designed you to be unbending in truth, unshaken by noise, and unwilling to sell your peace for acceptance. You became a walking contradiction to their logic. They thought strength looked like domination, but you showed them it could look like grace. They thought survival meant fitting in, but you survived by staying authentic. You broke every rule they tried to use to define power. That's why your presence disturbed the proud and inspired the broken, because you were proof that light could live among wolves and not lose its purity. The battles you faced weren't random. Every setback, every betrayal, every misunderstanding was warfare disguised as experience. You weren't being punished. You were being trained. Heaven was toughening your spirit, because the assignment on your life required resilience that couldn't be taught, only forged. Every tear was armor. Every disappointment was refinement. And every storm that came against you was secretly strengthening your wings. You are heaven's rebellion, not through destruction, but through endurance. You are living proof that darkness doesn't win by fighting harder. It loses when the light refuses to quit. Your survival isn't just personal victory. It's divine evidence that even when the world plots against God's plan, heaven always has the final move. Number 3, their attacks were proof of spiritual recognition. What most people call hate or jealousy is often just spiritual acknowledgement in disguise. They saw something in you that their words couldn't describe, but their spirits could feel. That's why they reacted before they even understood why. You didn't do anything to provoke them. Your light did. People connected to darkness recognize divine energy before anyone else, and their first instinct is to attack it. It's not personal. It's positional. They sensed what you carried long before it became visible. They could feel the authority on your life even when you were still figuring it out yourself. That's why the resistance came early. Some of the people who turned on you weren't driven by logic. They were driven by spiritual discomfort. Something in you reminded them of what they lost or never had. You carried peace that made their chaos nervous. You walked with grace that exposed their insecurities. Without saying a word, you revealed the imbalance in their spirit, and that made them treat you like an enemy. But here's the deeper truth. Opposition is the universe's way of identifying the chosen. The moment God marks you, life starts revealing who's aligned with you and who's not. Every betrayal, every smear, every silent battle was actually a form of spiritual recognition. The enemy was confirming your identity. The warfare around you was never random. It was evidence that something powerful was awakening inside you. They couldn't handle the weight of your calling because they weren't built to carry that frequency. So, they did the only thing they knew. They tried to distort it, dismiss it, or destroy it. But the more they talked, the more your purpose solidified. What they meant for harm became your confirmation. You didn't need validation from them. Their resistance was your validation. You were recognized before you were celebrated. The spiritual realm knew your name long before the world did. And that's why you became a target. They thought they were stopping you, but they were actually revealing you. Every attack you endured was proof that heaven had already introduced you to hell as a threat. And once you're recognized in the spirit, No human rejection can erase that divine appointment. Number 4, they didn't betray you. They revealed themselves. Betrayal always feels personal at first. But when you look deeper, it's really divine exposure. It's not about what they did to you. It's about what God needed you to see. Their disloyalty was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to deliver you. Every person who walked away or turned against you was actually being repositioned by a higher hand. You didn't lose anyone essential. You lost those who couldn't breathe at your altitude. God used their actions like an X-ray, showing you what eyes alone couldn't. You would have never believed some of them were envious, manipulative, or secretly rooting for your downfall until He let the mask slip. You prayed for clarity, and exposure became the answer. It didn't feel like protection in the moment. It felt like heartbreak. But the truth is, He had to break your illusion before it broke your purpose. Some people were never supposed to stand near your anointing because their loyalty had conditions. They loved you as long as you stayed small, but your growth offended the parts of them still living in fear. What you called betrayal was simply revelation. God didn't let them change, He let them show. Their words, their silence, their sudden distance. It was all spiritual proof that not everyone assigned to your path was meant to reach your promise. You see, exposure is heaven's way of clearing your environment before elevation. He couldn't let you carry counterfeit energy into the next chapter. He couldn't let you keep trusting hearts that would eventually contaminate the mission. You were never the victim. You were the vessel. They didn't break you. They identified themselves. The moment you stopped chasing explanations and started embracing revelation, peace took over. You began to understand that losing people wasn't punishment. It was purification. Every person who betrayed you made space for someone genuine. Every disconnection was a blessing wrapped in confusion. Now, you don't resent their absence. You thank God for the early warning. Because what looked like rejection was really redirection. Their betrayal didn't end your story, it secured it. You didn't lose anything real. You simply gained truth, and truth never betrays. Number 5, their apologies aren't about remorse. They're about realization. Time and truth have a way of exposing the difference between guilt and awareness. Most of the people who turned against you aren't suddenly sorry for what they did. They're just shocked by who you became despite it. They expected your downfall to validate their choices, but instead, your resilience made them question their judgment. They don't actually miss you. They miss what came with you. The energy, the peace, the covering, the favor. You were a walking blessing they mishandled, and now they're realizing what proximity to you really meant. When they had you, they were casual with your value. They thought your kindness was weakness, your giving was naivety, your patience was blind loyalty. Now they're realizing that you weren't naive, you were nurturing, you weren't weak. You were wise enough to know when silence could teach louder than confrontation. And that realization stings, because it's one thing to lose a person, but it's another to realize you lost divine favor that came through them. That's the kind of awareness that makes people apologize, not because they've changed, but because they finally see what their blindness cost them. The same mouth that disrespected your name now speaks it with caution. The same eyes that rolled at your presence now watch your growth with regret. They thought you were ordinary because they couldn't comprehend extraordinary energy in a humble vessel. They confused accessibility with simplicity. You gave them something sacred and they treated it like common. But when God elevated you, He didn't just vindicate you, He educated them. He turned your pain into a living lesson about misjudging divine vessels. So when the apologies come, and they will, you'll notice the tone isn't repentance, it's realization. They're not saying, "I'm sorry for hurting you." They're saying, I finally see who you were. But by the time they see it, access has already expired. You've grown into a place where closure isn't needed and validation isn't relevant. Their apologies are echoes of recognition too late to matter. Because when God reveals your true worth, even those who betrayed you are forced to confess, not with sincerity but with awe. Number 6, you were sent to be misunderstood first. It was never punishment, it was preparation. Every chosen one goes through a season where nothing and no one seems to understand them. It's not because you're broken or confusing. It's because you're operating from a frequency that most people haven't tuned into yet. You were never meant to fit their patterns. You were meant to disrupt them. The misjudgment you faced wasn't random. It was divine camouflage. God hid your purpose behind misunderstanding so that only the spiritually discerning could recognize what you carried. They called you strange, too deep, too intense, too much. But that was because they were looking at divine design through human logic. They saw your difference as a flaw when it was actually your fingerprint. God doesn't build chosen ones for comfort. He builds them for confrontation with darkness. That means your spirit will always stand out, and people who haven't met themselves yet will project their confusion onto you. They couldn't label you accurately because your purpose didn't fit their vocabulary. You had to walk through isolation because revelation can't be birthed in crowds. The misunderstanding was your shield. If they had understood you too soon, they would have tried to shape, limit, or misuse what God was still developing in private. You were hidden in plain sight, misinterpreted by those who were never meant to interpret you. They couldn't grasp why your energy felt heavy and holy at the same time, why your life didn't follow linear patterns, why you seemed to attract both favor and warfare simultaneously. But that's how heaven trains its soldiers, through mystery, not clarity. Before heaven crowns you, earth crucifies you. That's the pattern. They had to doubt you before they could see you. Because once God exposes who you truly are, there's no denying it. The same mouths that called you delusional will later call you divine. The same people who laughed at your faith will study your endurance. You were misunderstood first because you were meant to be recognized later. Every whisper, every judgment, every misread moment was part of your unveiling. They never really misunderstood you. They just met you before your time. And when your time finally arrived, so did their revelation. Number 7, they tried to dim you, not knowing you were fireproof. Every chosen one eventually meets people who mistake destruction for dominance. They thought if they ignored you, discredited you, or disrespected you enough times, your light would fade. They didn't understand that what burns others refines you. You were never powered by their validation. Your strength came from a source they can't access. Every time they tried to turn down your brightness, God turned up your resilience. What they meant to weaken you only awakened something eternal inside you. They threw words like stones, hoping you'd break under the weight of their opinions. But chosen ones don't burn out. They burn through. You were built with spiritual, flame-retardant faith. The more they attacked, the more your purpose expanded. Every disappointment became oxygen for your destiny. They thought the pressure would suffocate you, but it actually intensified your glow, because divine fire doesn't destroy its carrier, it forges them. That's why you've walked through things that should have ended you and still came out shining. What they didn't realize was that your light was never up for negotiation. It wasn't dependent on who applauded or who left. You don't rise despite the fire, you rise because of it. The heat exposed your durability. The trials made you unshakable. You became proof that divine power doesn't retreat when it's tested. It multiplies. They kept waiting for you to collapse, not knowing the fire they sent was training you for flames 10 times greater. You learned to stop fighting the fire and started partnering with it. You stopped asking, "Why me?" and started saying, "Try me." Because at some point, you realized the attacks weren't happening to you. They were happening for you. Every moment of rejection was a redirection toward purpose. Every attempt to bury you became soil for your next breakthrough. They wanted you silent, small, and shaken. Instead, you came out louder in spirit, bigger in purpose, and stronger in peace. You are not the product of the fire. You are the fire. You don't survive heat. You command it. And that's what makes you unstoppable. Because once a chosen one learns they're fireproof, no darkness can ever dim them again. Number 8. Their regret is the echo of divine justice. When God steps in, he doesn't always strike back, and sometimes he just lets you rise. You didn't need to clap back, prove points, or seek revenge. Your peace became the proof. Your calm after chaos became the correction they never saw coming. The same people who once laughed at your pain now watch you walk in purpose they can't touch. And that realization burns deeper than any payback ever could. You see, divine justice doesn't always roar. It unfolds quietly, in timing so perfect that it feels surgical. You didn't have to expose them. Life did. You didn't have to explain yourself. Results did. God made sure every wound you carried turned into wisdom they can't buy, mimic, or fake. You leveled up without bitterness, and that's what makes the tables turn with such grace. The peace you found isn't passive. It's power. It's a divine declaration that no amount of betrayal can rewrite what heaven already scripted. Their regret isn't about missing you. It's about realizing who they mishandled. They underestimated a chosen one, and now they live with the haunting reminder that grace they once mocked was actually greatness in progress. You were the blessing they didn't recognize until it was gone. Watching you evolve into everything they said you couldn't be has become their silent consequence. They can't escape it because every glimpse of your growth preaches what words can't. That divine favor can't be blocked by betrayal. The beauty of divine justice is that it never needs to humiliate. It educates. God doesn't just vindicate you. He uses your transformation as a lesson to those who tried to harm you. They expected your downfall, but he scripted your rise. And now, without you saying a word, your existence corrects their narrative. That's not revenge. That's restoration. So you moved on. Not with anger, but with assurance. You learned that the greatest clapback is peace that can't be disturbed. The greatest justice is thriving without trying to prove you deserve it. And the greatest irony is that the ones who tried to break you now have to watch you become unbreakable. That's divine justice. Poetic, patient, and perfect. Number 9. They thought they broke you, but they built your throne. Every attempt to tear you down was actually construction in disguise. The pain they caused didn't ruin you. It revealed you. Every betrayal, every loss, every heartbreak was laying the foundation for something greater than they could ever imagine. They believed they were ending you, but God was using their attacks as raw material for your rise. What they threw to wound you became what heaven used to crown you. You didn't just survive what they did. You evolved through it. Every time they underestimated you, they were contributing to your making. They thought your silence was weakness, but it was strategy. While they were busy celebrating your supposed downfall, you were gathering wisdom in the ruins. You learned how to rebuild from nothing, how to trust your own anointing, how to turn pain into precision. You became your own architect, using every cut, every scar, every disappointment as design. Your throne wasn't handed to you. It was hammered into existence through betrayal. Each person who left gave you space to expand. Each lie told about you taught you truth that can't be shaken. Each door slammed in your face redirected you to one only heaven could open. They thought they were breaking your spirit, but they were actually strengthening your foundation. Because when you've been broken publicly and still rise privately, you become unstoppable. That's the irony of divine preparation. Your enemies end up building what they tried to bury. They thought their cruelty would disqualify you, but it actually qualified you. You now sit on a throne built from the very things that were meant to destroy you. Your composure, your clarity, your discernment, they were all sculpted in the fire they lit. You didn't just overcome, you were refined into royalty. Now your existence is poetic justice. You became the empire they said you'd never create. The pain didn't end your story, it gave it structure. The betrayals didn't define you, they designed you. You are the living proof that God doesn't waste pain, He repurposes it. They thought they broke you, but every crack was just another place for light to pour through. And that light now sits on a throne they unknowingly built. Number 10. God hid you in chaos so you'd learn control. It never made sense at first how someone chosen, someone carrying divine purpose, could be surrounded by so much noise, confusion, and betrayal. But that was the training ground. God placed you in the middle of storms, not to drown you, but to teach you how to command peace within them. You weren't being punished, you were being prepared. He could have made your path smooth, but smooth roads don't produce strategy. You had to learn how to think clearly when everything around you was shaking. That's not weakness, that's divine discipline. Your calm became your weapon. They mistook your composure for passivity, not realizing it was spiritual strength in disguise. While others lost themselves in emotion, you were learning precision. You stopped reacting and started responding. You stopped defending yourself and started discerning who even deserved your energy. Chaos forced you to locate the stillness within you, the same stillness that hell can't touch. God didn't remove the noise. He trained you to rise above it. That's how you became dangerous without ever raising your voice. While they raged, you learned mastery. You discovered that power isn't proven in arguments, it's proven in alignment. You stopped chasing fairness and started chasing focus. You learned that control isn't about dominating others, it's about mastering yourself. Every situation that tried to pull you out of character became a classroom. Every test that came to rattle you ended up revealing how much authority you actually carry. And that's what scared them the most, that your silence carried more weight than their noise ever could. While they conspired, you were crowned in silence. They thought you were isolated, but you were in incubation. God was building something in private that couldn't be contaminated by their opinions. Every delay, every detour, every betrayal was part of your divine conditioning. When the time finally came for you to step out, you did it with the kind of peace that can't be faked. The kind that only comes from surviving storms without losing center. Now your control speaks louder than any chaos ever could. You mastered the art of moving with divine timing. You don't fight for position. You attract it through discipline, and that's why you're unstoppable now. You were forged in confusion, but you emerged with command. Number 11. Their apology is a sign of shift, not sincerity. The change in tone doesn't always mean a change of heart. Some people don't return because they've evolved. They return because the energy around you shifted, and they want access to what they once mishandled. It's not conviction driving them. It's curiosity, guilt, or the discomfort of seeing you at peace without them. When light exposes darkness, guilt often starts pretending to be transformation. But what they call apology is sometimes just strategy. The truth is, genuine repentance brings humility, but false remorse brings performance. That's why their words feel rehearsed and their timing suspicious. They show up when the dust has settled, when your blessings start becoming visible, when the version of you they tried to break is now flourishing. It's not that they suddenly see your worth. They finally see the consequences of underestimating it. The shift isn't always in their soul. Sometimes it's in their circumstance. Life humbled them, not love. Apologies like that aren't about restoration. They're about re-entry. They want to come back into the light they once ridiculed, hoping proximity can replace accountability. But you've grown too much to confuse access with forgiveness. You can forgive without reopening the door. You can bless them without letting them sit where betrayal once lived. Because spiritual maturity isn't about who you welcome back. It's about who you no longer need to explain yourself to. Some people apologize because the truth finally confronted them in silence. Watching you move on without bitterness became the mirror they couldn't escape. Your peace revealed their immaturity. Your healing exposed their harm. But don't mistake awareness for transformation. Just because they recognize your value now doesn't mean they've developed the capacity to honor it. So when the apology comes, discern the spirit behind it. God allows some people to say sorry, not for reconciliation, but for closure. The apology isn't proof of change, it's proof of consequence. They're not always sorry they hurt you. They're sorry they can't undo the way God still blessed you after they did. That's not sincerity. That's realization disguised as remorse. And wisdom means knowing the difference. Number 12. You were their mirror, not their enemy. The tension was never truly about you. It was about what your presence forced them to confront within themselves. Your light didn't offend them. Their reflection did. You carried an energy that made people see their own shadows more clearly. And for those unwilling to face truth, that's unbearable. You didn't criticize, you didn't expose, you just existed. And somehow your existence became conviction. That's the power of authenticity. It silently calls out everything false without saying a word. When people are living out of wounds, insecurity, or ego, they see mirrors as threats. Your peace reminded them how chaotic they were. Your humility highlighted their pride. Your consistency revealed their instability. They couldn't handle being around you because being near you stripped away their illusions. They weren't fighting you. They were fighting the version of themselves they pretended didn't exist. You didn't trigger their anger, you triggered their awareness. That's why proximity felt like punishment to them. Every time they stood next to you, they saw the gap between who they were and who they were meant to be. Instead of growing from that realization, they resented it. They told themselves you were acting different or trying to be better, when really you were just being real. And realness is confrontational to those still hiding behind performance. You didn't come to expose their flaws. You came to model freedom. You showed them that it's possible to live with integrity, to forgive without weakness, to be powerful without pride. But when someone is comfortable in dysfunction, even peace feels offensive. They wanted your light dimmed so they wouldn't have to face the work their own soul required. So they painted you as the problem because that was easier than admitting the truth. You were never the enemy. You were evidence. And the irony is, what they rejected is exactly what they needed. Your energy was medicine, but they mistook it for poison because healing burns before it soothes. You were never there to compete. You were there to reflect. But not everyone can handle the mirror that doesn't lie. Their distance wasn't your loss. It was their escape from self-confrontation. You didn't push them away. Their reflection did. Number 13. They wanted to hurt you, but ended up highlighting you. Every plot they designed to destroy your name became the platform that spread it. They thought they were dimming your light by throwing shade, but all they did was make your glow more noticeable. Every rumor, every whisper, every attempt to discredit you turned into free advertising for your purpose. You didn't have to defend yourself. Their noise did the marketing. What was meant to break your reputation became the reason people started paying attention to your name. That's how divine justice operates. God has a way of turning mockery into momentum. They underestimated the power of a chosen one's endurance. They assumed the pressure would crush you, not knowing it would press out the oil of your anointing. The more they lied, the more God elevated you. The more they schemed, the more doors opened in your favor. Because when heaven is your PR department, no amount of gossip can cancel your destiny. They wanted to humiliate you publicly, but your rise became the headline they never saw coming. The beauty of being chosen is that you don't have to fight back. You just have to keep walking. Every time they tried to drag your name through the mud, God used that mud to plant your next miracle. Every scheme was secretly an opportunity for your exposure. Your response wasn't rage, it was refinement. You didn't argue, you evolved. You didn't react, you elevated. And that's what confused them most. Your peace turned their persecution into your platform. Now the same mouths that spoke against you can't stop speaking about you. The same people who plotted to destroy your credibility are now witnesses to your divine comeback. They became unintentional messengers of your destiny. What they meant for harm became heaven's marketing strategy. You didn't have to chase validation. They delivered it on your behalf. They wanted to hurt you, but all they did was highlight what God already ordained. They thought they were burying you, not realizing you were a seed. Every attack accelerated your visibility. Every lie became a light shining on your truth. Persecution wasn't your setback, it was your promotion. They didn't crown you, their hatred did. Number 14, you were never fighting them, you were training them. They thought they were your enemies, but in truth, they were your lessons in disguise. Every person who tried to test your limits, question your worth, or sabotage your peace became part of your divine syllabus. They were never real threats. They were instruments for your development. God used them as living classrooms to teach you discernment, boundaries, and self-mastery. You weren't at war with people. You were in training for purpose. Each betrayal taught you to trust intuition over intention. Each disappointment taught you that love without loyalty is just performance. Every argument, rejection, and misunderstanding was a pop quiz from heaven, preparing you for the leadership your destiny demanded. They thought they were winning when they provoked you, but they were unknowingly helping you master restraint. They thought they were weakening you, but they were actually building your resistance. You were never fighting against them. You were refining what they couldn't comprehend. Their chaos trained your composure. Their dishonor trained your humility. Their manipulation trained your clarity. God used their attacks to teach you control under pressure, grace under fire, and focus under distraction. Every attempt to drain you ended up deepening your roots. You didn't just survive them, you studied them. You learned what love isn't, what loyalty looks like, and what peace truly costs. Those lessons became your armor. Now, when new challenges arise, you don't flinch, because you've already graduated from that level of warfare. You've seen the same patterns before, just in different faces. What once would have broken you now barely shakes you. The training worked. You understand now that your opponents were never random. They were assigned by God to expose the weaknesses you didn't know you had. Their resistance forced you into refinement. They thought they were the opposition, but they were the curriculum. You didn't need their approval. You needed their pressure. Every encounter was a divine seminar on strength, wisdom, and spiritual authority. You didn't just gain experience, you gained dominion. What they meant to destroy you actually developed you, and now you move like someone who knows. The fight was never against them. It was always for your evolution. Every chosen one eventually learns that nothing in their story was random. The betrayal wasn't a setback, it was a setup. The rejection wasn't abandonment, it was redirection. The tears, the silence, the confusion, all of it was sacred construction for the strength you now walk in. They thought they were fighting you, but they were helping you. Every critic, every plot, every false accusation became the hammer that shaped your armor. What they meant as harm, heaven translated into holiness. You didn't just survive, why? You transformed. You didn't just heal, you ascended. Now you understand. You were never the victim of their plans. You were the vessel of God's purpose. Every season of pain carried divine instruction. You learned how to move without malice, how to see beyond offense, how to stay still while storms screamed your name. You learned that spiritual warfare wasn't about proving your power. It was about mastering your peace. And in mastering your peace, you unlocked dominion. You became a force they couldn't define, a presence they couldn't predict, and a soul they could no longer manipulate. Their apologies now are not your validation, they're confirmation. Confirmation that the tables turned. Confirmation that heaven always had the final say. They see it now, the anointing they mocked, the grace they misjudged, the authority they tried to diminish. You were never ordinary. You were just hidden until your purpose matured. Now that it has, every attempt to bury you only exposes your roots of resilience. They didn't build your throne, they confirmed it. You are walking proof that divine timing laughs in the face of human opposition. So stand tall in your divine identity. Don't shrink to fit the versions of you they once misunderstood. You've outgrown their narratives, surpassed their limits, and evolved beyond their reach. The same ones who tried to discredit you will now have to reference you. Because when God writes your story, even your enemies become footnotes of His glory. If this message resonated with your spirit, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment sharing what spoke to your soul. Don't forget to share this with someone who needs a reminder that divine purpose never loses. It just evolves in silence until the right time to roar. Your time is now. Stay blessed always.